Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
Today's a very FPL focused people's poll. We are looking at the triple captain chip, which is probably going to be the most popular chip this week. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of bench boost as well. But with the double game week ahead of us, James, a lot of people are debating who to put the armband on, and yeah, basically that really.
We gave four options in Sunday's People's Poll vote. The idea of a free hit 26 didn't pick up much traction, 5% of the votes. What's interesting about this as well, it does give a small scale idea of what a lot of people are thinking of doing this week. Also, the idea of wildcard, game week 26, which I think is quite a suitable option for those who perhaps used bench boost and triple captain or perhaps landed badly this game week and don't want to use a chip this week. 20% of the vote. Bench boost options had 32% of the vote, but the winning vote quite comfortably was triple captain options, won 44% of the vote. I think the first thing I would like to say from a chip perspective for this particular week is it's probably the best game week for all four of those chips. So it's okay if you're on a different route to triple captain. And one of the things we're going to look at here is some triple captain options outside of game week 26, because we know there are a lot of you who are obviously setting up to bench boost now and don't know necessarily when you're going to use the triple captaincy. What are you on for this week plan wise, Suj?
Triple captain, I think, is going to be the one. Having said that, I hadn't really given it excessive amounts of thought, but I think triple captain was always on the radar for this week. I'd been building up my transfers, so I've got 2 frees going into this week. So my free transfers that I make will be very focused around making sure that I have the best option for triple captain. Now I've already got a number of players that are in our shortlist for really good triple captaincy options. So if I pick one of them, then I won't be focusing my transfers around the TC chip. And it's worth saying to the listeners as well, if anybody's thinking, oh, I'm not using my triple captain this week, there's no point in me listening. Whoever the best option for triple captain is also by default the best option for captain. So listening to the options that we're going to go through in this show not only gives you the best triple captain option, it just gives you the best captain option, right? You should always be putting the armband on the best option regardless. So you may be swayed, or your decision process for who to captain might be helped through the list that we're about to go through.
I don't think there's a clear standout.
No, this is the good thing. I think it's actually a positive that there's some differential options this week.
I think when it comes to Saturday morning, I think you'll probably find that the majority of people triple captain will probably end up going on Harry Kane. We'll talk about a few reasons why that might be the case. But genuinely, there are, even in this particular game week, probably 10 to 12 names I think you can consider. And if someone said to me, this is what I'm doing with a triple captaincy, and it's on one of these 12 or so players, I'd go, all right, crack on. Good luck. I wouldn't have too much of a problem with that. Should we, in the first instance, look at those options for this particular game week, Suj?
And before people also get too stressed about it, we've said before that we believe that this is the least valuable chip, potentially, of all of the chips. I mean, if you got 12 points from your captain over a double game, would you be happy, James? 12 to 15 points?
Yeah.
So
to be honest, 15... double figures, fine.
So 12 to 15 points is the additional gain on the triple captain over just the regular captaincy. Excuse me. And the likelihood of your captain blanking on a double game week and someone else is going ballistic is very small. So you're not likely to lose a lot of ground unless someone does go ballistic and does an Aguero 5 goals or what have you, which is also possible.
Yeah, I should clarify. When I say, I thought you got rid of that COVID, Suj.
My team went down the wrong way.
I clarify in the first instance, when I say double points, obviously I'm not happy with 4 points times 3.
No,
10 points times 3. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing here is to look at 3 players who are extremely unlikely to double again. Essentially, they're not going to, unless we walk into a COVID issue or something like that. And that's part because of their involvement in European competitions. So the first player I want to look at is Jamie Vardy. who on the face of it has quite a difficult double this week in Arsenal at home, Burnley away. And they're two sides who you don't commonly get in behind, which is obviously Vardy's forte and what he's best at. And obviously there's a little bit of concern about James Maddison and is he going to be fit or not for the weekend? We haven't got that information at time of recording. But one thing that certainly throws up in Jamie Vardy's favour is his incredible record against Arsenal. 11 goals and 1 assist in 12 appearances against Arsenal. Interestingly, he only has 3 goals and 1 assist in 11 appearances against Burnley. But that leads you to believe that there's every chance he'll get a goal over the 2 games, wouldn't you? Yeah. They're likely. I would say the 2 games are not likely to be high-scoring games. If you said to me now Leicester are going to win 3-2 twice, I'd be pretty surprised. You would fancy Leicester in the games at the moment because they're playing so well. I spoke yesterday about the idea that I think there's every chance that they could finish second in the league this season. Vardy's consistency means that he's often been a bad pick for people when you focus on the idea of, there's good fixtures coming up, such as they obviously have Brighton and Sheffield United after the double, which adds to the appeal if you wanted to buy Jamie Vardy this week. But it's the Arsenal game that's most interesting, I think, because he just murders them.
Yeah, he
like,
does
all the time.
He does. But this is a slightly different Arsenal now. I mean, they were able to hold Manchester City to 1 goal. I do agree with you that that Jamie Vardy is less likely to get in behind, and I don't think these games are going to be good, going to be high scoring. I think 1-0s and 2-1s is the best you can hope for. I'm less drawn to Jamie Vardy because of his recent form. I know he's had injury layoffs and stuff. He was so explosive at the start of the season. If you look at his goals overall, so much of it came in the first 5, 6, 7 game weeks and the penalties. So that's one drawback for Jamie Vardy. The other is Leicester seem to share the goals around a little bit at the moment. Barnes, Maddison, all chipping in with returns. So, yeah, Vardy's a good shout because of the Arsenal game, but he wouldn't be top of my list necessarily.
Alternative single game days for Jamie Vardy in the future. Sheffield United 28, just mentioned. They also have West Brom at home in 32, Palace at home in 33, Newcastle at home 35. It's a really nice stretch for Jamie Vardy between game week 32 and 35. The other fixture that's in the middle of there is Southampton away, which obviously he got a hat-trick in last season in the game, which no one can remember the score of. But if Jamie Vardy's the guy you're going to be looking to back in the double, it's only likely to be this one. Now, the 2 other players who are extremely unlikely to have any future doubles are Bruno Fernandez and Mo Salah. And they kind of fall into a category together because they're obviously so highly owned. You're in a position now, particularly with Bruno, where I saw Tom Candle from Who Got the Assist commenting on this the other day about basically you've got 3 options with him. You either captain him every week, you accept that there's a period coming up where you're not going to captain him much and you're limiting the damage, or you sell him. It's basically where you're at. Now, Bruno's got 2 away fixtures in the double, Chelsea and Crystal Palace. And the face of it's away games. But Bruno Fernandez' stats in away games this season is very impressive. In 13...
Manchester United's stats in away games.
They haven't lost away from home since, I think, I want to say January last year, maybe. I think when they lost at Anfield. 13 away appearances so far for Bruno, one of which was a sub. 7 goals, 7 assists. He's got 56% goal involvement in Manchester United's goals in away games. But 1 assist from the 4 previous meetings he's had with the 2 opponents in the double. So he's played against Chelsea and Crystal Palace respectively twice before, and he's only got 1 assist from it. It was on a corner for Bruno Fernandez, for Harry Maguire, in the win at Stamford Bridge last season. So that's an important thing with stats. Where do you sit on that? Okay, away record, unbelievable, brilliant, both for him and for United. But then record against the opponents played previously doesn't read too much. You could also put too much weightage into that because he hasn't played against Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea before, has he?
No, I was going to say, what would you think about the fact that Chelsea now have got 3 at the back with the wing backs, and then you've got a Kante or Kovacic, whoever's in the middle, that will suck out that space potentially for Fernandez. But I also think having 3 at the back leaves more space for the likes of Rashford or Greenwood or James or Martial to run in and try and find space. So
I would think it's to be honest, it's quite possibly a benefit in terms of 1 less in the midfield area. I spoke before the Newcastle game about the fact that I thought it might be a struggle for him because of Newcastle's diamond, and for a long period it was. but he still walked away with a double point haul, right? He's still got an assist and
He's a
a goal.
nutter. And it's all, you know, the thing with Bruno is always like second half. It was the same with KDB. It's like you get to 60, 70 minutes, he hasn't returned, and you think, oh man. And then he ends the game with like 15 points so often.
Also, the Everton game, Everton went there and basically played a diamond, and he was anonymous for half hour and then scored a brilliant goal. So I don't think with him, he's such a special player. I don't think you should look too much into the tactical idea behind the games. I would have thought in terms of the setup of both teams, it wouldn't be a problem for him. I think particularly in the Chelsea game, he'll probably see a lot of the ball in certain areas. Although I envisage that being low scoring. Chelsea against United is one thing to say. The thing with Bruno is he could return once over the 2 games and it could comfortably be 11 or 12 points. And the reality is, if you go back to what we said at the start, that's all right, isn't it? He regularly picks up the bonus to go with his returns. I know he's obviously ended up with 2 returns at the weekend. He got booked in the game as well. It doesn't seem to matter. So his returns, particularly in terms of goals, are almost weighted more than the 5 points that he actually gets because bonus normally comes with it. So to be honest,
he had the same goal and assist and clean sheet, same as Marcus Rashford, and yet he ended up nicking the max bonus points of Marcus Rashford at the weekend.
That's what I'm saying. In spite of the booking, obviously no clean sheet point.
In the end, there wasn't. Yeah, there was one point. Yeah, no, you're right.
Mo Salah is the other one who's everybody's darling majority of the time in terms of his FPL record. He also has Chelsea in the double and Sheffield United away. He has 2 goals and 2 assists in 7 appearances for Liverpool against Chelsea. 1 goal in 3 appearances against Sheffield United. Doesn't sound amazing, but none of those appearances were with all of Sheffield United's 3 centre-backs missing. So that's
I was going to say, it's Sheffield United's B defence, if that, and so that's really tempting.
I think it is that more than anything that makes you want to consider Mo Salah. It puts me off because I don't quite know what that looks like. Yeah, I think it's probably for Sheffield United, it's probably Ampadu, Jagielka, and probably Brian again. Brian is a very limited footballer, and presumably he will play as the left-sided centre-half, which naturally you would think would be good for Salah. It's not impossible that they drop Ender Stevens into that area and play Lowe or Bogle as wing-back to counter the threat of perhaps Salah. And of course, Liverpool's attacking form at the moment, as much as their defensive, is pretty off-putting. I've already said on the pod yesterday that I think there's a good chance Chelsea will go to Anfield and win next week. But if Mo Salah's the guy you think that's the guy I can trust most in the double game week, like Bruno and like Jamie Vardy, they've obviously got penalties between all 3 of them, which is definitely an advantage. But if you want Salah, it's probably this particular game week as well. Just to highlight single fixtures that the 2 have got left. Bruno has Brighton at home in 30, Burnley at home in 32, Fulham at home in 37. Best away fixture for him is probably Leeds in 33. I think if I was to go for a single fixture, it'd probably be that one, to be honest, going off the 6-2 they had against each other previously. Salah's got Fulham at home in 27. There's West Brom away in 36. But the danger with these players, and you can tag Vardy into this as well, if you're thinking, I'll leave that for the single game week, obviously all these clubs are still in European competition. And the deeper they go, the more the rotation threat you've got as well. I mean, in Bruno's case, Bruno plays 98% of the games. We know that, so it shouldn't be too much for concern. But the Crystal Palace fixture sitting in between Chelsea and the Manchester derby in game week 27 would maybe make you a little bit nervous as well. I would assume, because he'll play. You would think he always seems to play. Salah, there shouldn't be that concern, I don't think, although Jota is back in training, but I don't think he's going to be available for game week 26. So all 3 of them, and that's the other thing with the triple captaincy, is my player going to play twice? That's the obvious thing you want to ask yourself.
Well, if he's Sadio Mane for you, he isn't.
Listen, you can't...
Old wounds.
You can't...
Injuries happen.
Exactly. I mean, we didn't all just pick Leroy Sané non-turning up. You know, there's not a lot you can do when your player gets injured after 20 minutes of game 1. Shit happens. Yeah, you deserve that. We'll come back onto Sané and Mane, by the way.
With these 2, I feel like if I picked Bruno Fernandez as my triple captain this week and he blanked, I would be able to look at myself and say, you know what? He's a good player. He's been so consistent, top scoring FPL player this season. It was the right decision to pick against Chelsea and Crystal Palace with the record. If I pick Salah, I'll look at it and I say, was it a risk? I'll look back at it and say, Liverpool's form, the fixtures are slightly more difficult. Was it really the right decision to make? And I'll kick myself if Salah blanks, whereas I won't kick myself necessarily if Bruno Fernandez blanks. However, Sheffield United, I think the fixtures for Mo Salah are better. Sheffield United have got a very weak defence. And that Chelsea home game for Liverpool, depending on what happens in the first round of fixtures, is going to be very interesting because Chelsea obviously have a 2 point advantage in the race for top four. Liverpool are unlikely to win the Champions League, let's be honest, with their defensive issues. And so top four is still a big deal to get into the Champions League next season. So that Liverpool-Chelsea home game for Liverpool is a real chance to get back into the top four. I'm going to assume that they're going to leapfrog West Ham in this, to get back above Chelsea and have the advantage on Chelsea for top four. So I think they're going to go for it in that Chelsea game. And it makes me think that the Liverpool, despite the low morale and all the rest of it, are going to be motivated for both of these games because they could end it back in the top four, and that's a big deal for them.
They've essentially got the same double. You've both got Chelsea. Salah's got Sheffield United away. Bruno's got Crystal Palace away. There's not a lot in it.
No.
I mean, Crystal Palace, remember, lost 7-0 at home to Mo Salah's Liverpool, right? At a period where actually with Palace, they obviously had a really good result last night. We don't know how that happened. Unbelievable, that game, honestly, but not now. But at a period, that Liverpool 7-0 result came at a period where Palace were doing okay. We were talking a lot about that left side, the kind of Eze Zaha PVA link. Obviously, Zaha's not available now. They've got the result last night without him, but nobody knows how, right? If you had to go one of the two this week, would you go Bruno then?
In my situation, which is a rank of 900k, I would go Salah. But if you're in 300k, I would go Bruno.
I think I'd go Bruno with the two if I had to make that choice, yeah. And they are both absolutely reasonable options. The two most powerful midfield players in the game, basically. Kevin De Bruyne to be confirmed. We'll come on to him in a little bit. But in terms of their consistency for actual goal scoring, these are the two big hitters. They've both got a double. If you want to back one of them, it looks like the time would be now. Couple of alternatives to suggest for you, and these two are interesting.
Non-Big Six players.
Ollie Watkins and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and they're interesting because they obviously have the potential for the extra double as well, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But if we look at them first in terms of options for this week, Ollie Watkins appeals, Leeds away and Sheffield United away. That sounds all right to me, actually. Leeds, we know any game can go off. And Sheffield United away, I've obviously just spoken about, not in a good place defensively at the moment. It is tempered, of course, by we think, and it's unconfirmed, that Jack Grealish is going to be unavailable at the moment. There is one concerning stat on Ollie Watkins that I found, which is his goal involvement in away games for Aston Villa this season is only 18%. He has only 3 goals, no assists in away games for Villa this season. However, other than Tottenham and Liverpool, it's basically, if you listed all the tough away games, he's had them all. So there is a little bit of mitigating circumstance to that. He has proven that he can obviously get returns away from home. He scored twice at the Emirates in that excellent 3-0 victory in the first half of the season. I think this is one more with a go. I like the fact that the player has the double against Leeds more than anything is possibly what tempts me on that. Just because, Leeds games can go off. Ollie Watkins, any consideration for you on this game week?
No.
I wouldn't hate it.
The irony is it's nothing to do with Ollie Watkins and everything to do with Jack Grealish. I just don't feel comfortable triple captaining Ollie Watkins knowing that I don't know that Jack Grealish is out, but I think that when I do know that he's definitely out of both games, that will be the time.
That's fair enough. We'll come back onto the idea of the potential double afterwards. Now, Calvert-Lewin has Southampton at home and West Bromwich Albion away. One of the first questions I asked Sean at Spirit Blues on Thursday's Clash of the Correspondents that you'll hear on Thursday is triple captain Calvert-Lewin. Talk to me about it. And I don't mind doing the spoiler now. It's a little bit of a no, but then he really talks him up later in the podcast. So it's really worth listening to.
Catching Sean after the Liverpool win would have been, yes, stick the armband on Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I like the idea of this Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
56% goal involvement. Interestingly, one stat, he's never scored against Southampton in 7 appearances. Only has the 1 assist. But did obviously score a hat-trick against West Bromwich Albion in game week 2. Sorry, Suj, I interrupted you.
No, DCL is a good shout for me, definitely.
So you'd prefer Calvert-Lewin over Watkins, looking at those two then?
Without a doubt. And the interesting thing is I may buy Watkins for Antonio this week to give me another doubler. So I don't mind buying Ollie Watkins. He's a bit of a poacher, right? The majority, all of his goals have been in and around the 6-yard box and that kind of thing. I think Ollie Watkins is a good shout, but I'm almost buying Ollie Watkins not just for this week, but the upcoming game weeks and covering me off 29. Not that Antonio doesn't cover me off 29, but Antonio at least, Ollie Watkins at least plays in 29. If I would not even hesitate to go Dominic Calvert-Lewin over Ollie Watkins this week with triple captain.
I would be of the same opinion of that. I think they were worth grouping together, like I said, because that potential future double, which we'll speak about a bit later, which would be against each other. But I think, Calvert-Lewin over Watkins, I'd agree with. I think there is a little bit of a surge towards the idea of Calvert-Lewin, let's say, in the Twitter underground at the moment because of the fixtures. Southampton, obviously, 1 point from the last 7. West Brom can be got at, but as you'll also hear on COTC on Thursday, a little bit better defensively, and OK, who's outstanding now, apparently, according to Gemma Baggins. He's made a bit of a difference holding midfield for West Brom, which actually allows Maitland-Niles and Gallagher to push on. We speak about that Thursday. But it might be that West Brom's a tougher nut now to crack, which is that's really important to say. It could be that that whipping boy tag they had, it could be that it's already gone. Looking at the last 2 fixtures, I mean, they were excellent for an hour with a man short against Burnley. We shouldn't overly judge defensive performances against Burnley when Burnley have the majority of the ball. But Manchester United, they largely frustrated, right? They really did. United dominated the whole game, but you look back on it afterwards and go, how many chances they really have? Wasn't that many, actually.
Will
so it could be they've sorted the
suspended?
issues.
Sorry.
Ajayi won't be suspended for the Everton game. No, he'll be suspended for Brighton.
So again, then.
But then Dara O'Shea performed quite well at centre back when he came on at the weekend. They're much better off as well. One of the things, really interesting things we look at is performances of Connor Townsend, and West Brom's results are much better with him in the team than without. He's back fit now as well. So maybe that West Brom game's not as great as it looks. And we also on COTC we discussed the idea that Everton struggle quite a bit when they play Southampton, just the contrast of styles. Saints have played very well against Everton on the last 2 or 3 occasions that they've met. So that's something to bear in mind as well. But I think on paper, you just go, Southampton, West Brom, one of the best strikers in the league, high goal involvement for his team. Why wouldn't you consider him? And I think you can.
You can consider him. But I don't know if it gives you any indication of where my head's at, but I would rather triple captain Mo Salah than Dominic Calvert-Lewin this week. For me, I feel like it'd be a better shot.
I think I'd possibly go Calvert-Lewin over Salah. Genuinely. Not over Bruno, though, I don't think.
Yeah.
Starting to narrow this down now, aren't we? Let's bring the main man into the conversation. Harry Kane.
Oh, yes. And I know he's top of your list along with Min Son potentially.
On the face of it, good double. Burnley at home, Fulham away. Personally, I think it would have been better for Kane if it had been Burnley at home and Southampton at home. Harry Kane, though, and this is a key statistic to obviously bring him into the conversation, 65% goal involvement in Tottenham's goals when he's been on the pitch this season. He's monstrous. It suggests to us, just looking at that on bare basic facts, if Tottenham would score, say, twice in both games, you can expect 2 returns from Harry Kane. From a captaincy perspective in a double game week, you're not going to argue against that much. Kane could score once in both games and get 18 points. Because the thing with Tottenham as well, they ain't going to win 4 or 5-0 probably. I know we beat Burnley 5-0 last season, but they're probably not. But he's highly likely to be involved, isn't he?
He looked lively on Sunday.
Well, exactly. That's it.
Shots off in front of goal at any moment. I'm like, you give him half a yard and he'll get a shot off. more often than not, it's on target or in and around target. Yeah, Harry Kane is the one that I would be fearful not owning and not triple captaining this
I
weekend.
think the thing with Harry, the one that you're always looking for when you think back to that kind of peak period in 16, 17 and all those goals towards the end of that season, the incredible game week 37 when he scored 5, is shot volume. Shot volume with Harry. Because if Harry's having shot volume and is high, Harry will score goals. Because he's one of the best strikers around. Right foot, left foot, doesn't matter. He's obviously played the 3 games since the small break of injury. And the small break looks to have done him good, in my opinion. Rather than in the past, he's obviously been out for a month or so, and then it takes him 2-3 games to build fitness. It's almost like he had a 10-day break that did him good, a little bit of a rest. He scored against West Brom in the game back, and he should have got more. Hit woodwork at Man City. And he had efforts against yourselves. I mean, he's basically come as close as you can come to hitting both posts without actually hitting them. With the free kick he had wide, the left-footed shot that went narrowly wide the other side, the cross that he put in as well, which was incredibly cleared by Declan Rice. He had shots in the first half as well, so he was heavily involved. And that's what you want from Harry Kane. His record against Burnley is extremely good. 7 goals and 3 assists in 9 appearances, which does include a hat-trick. Over the Christmas period that year, he broke the most goals in a year. He's also scored every time he's played Fulham. That's only 3 league meetings, but he scored in all of them. And also can claim a hat-trick from the last time he played at Craven Cottage in an FA Cup tie when they were a championship side as well. So the historical against the 2 teams is good. I don't think you should look at the historical against Fulham because they're a very different team now.
Yeah,
but I think
the
historical against Burnley you can look at, because Sean Dyche's been there a long time, right? We know what we get with them. So this really is one where I think you can bring the historical into the conversation and say, okay, do you know what? He performs well against Burnley. I would ignore the statistical against Fulham from previous.
Harry Kane is a clever... He uses his body well. Physically, he's going to give Ben Mee and Tarkowski some trouble. He's a pain in the arse, let's be honest. He gets in your face. He's awkward. Whereas a lot of people struggle with Burnley's physicality, I actually think Harry Kane won't struggle with Burnley's physicality.
What's the other thing that Burnley do a lot of? Defensively.
Clear crosses well?
They allow a lot of shots.
They do, eh? I don't know. You're telling me.
Where you think Nick Pope keeps getting all these fucking bonus points from, mate?
True. Yeah,
they allow shots from distance. Jack Tone at Turfy Topper always talks about that. He says, we don't mind. We concede shots from distance. Yeah. Harry scored one from about 30 yards against Burnley last season. He's very capable. His records in the more recent games, he obviously assisted Son at Burnley this year. He scored against Fulham earlier in the season at White Hart Lane. So I think it was 6 and 5. To be honest, if you offered me 11 points now from the 2 games, I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with that. And the last time we played Burnley at home, 2 goals and an assist. I think it would have been top scoring player that game. It was one of Mourinho's first games in charge when we looked like we might be a football team. And that's the other thing that you have to, if you're thinking of triple captain Kane or captain Kane this week, you have to bring that into the conversation. Spurs have won 1 game in 6. Now that should be off-putting. Is it? No.
To be honest with you, no, because I think from an attacking point of view, with these games, you'll be able to get some returns. I think Harry Kane is the best triple captain option this week. So, I mean, the case that you put forward, you didn't need to sell it to me. I'm convinced that he is. I think just for a lot of people, what's his ownership now? Let's have a cheeky look.
Big enough. I would expect Harry's effective ownership to be 100%. My instinct is he'll be the most.
26.7%, of which I would say 10 to 15% is dead teams.
Once you factor in triple captaincy chips going on, though, it could easily still get past 100% easily. They'll bring that effective up massive.
What about his partner in crime?
And a lot of people are going to buy him this week as well.
Yeah. That's
Sonny. 3 goals, 1 assist in 5 appearances against Burnley. It's decent. He's only played against the Fulham once, which was the home game this season. We should have scored in. He went clean through 1-on-1 and rarely for him missed and hit the post. It depends a little bit. I think there was a lot of people saying he looked tired at the weekend. I felt it was more a case, as explained to you, that Well, I think he just had to stay really wide because of the amount of attacking players that we actually ended up with on the pitch. I mean, we never played with a left back in the last 15 minutes. I don't know what that formation was. So he had to stay wide. You might as well say he played as a really high winger with responsibility to go back as well. So I wouldn't read too much into the game at the weekend. His minutes are concerning. What I would say about him is we've got the second leg of this Europa League tie against Wolfsberger on Thursday. Now, surely he doesn't play. So there should be a week break for him now. The other benefit for both Kane and Son in the game week is there is a 4-day gap between the games, right? We don't play Fulham till the Thursday. Admittedly, we play Crystal Palace on the Sunday night afterwards, after Fulham, 3 days later. But that 4-day gap is quite appealing in comparison to many of the others we mentioned here. I've only got the 3-day turnarounds. Any thoughts for Sonny over Kane?
I would, if I don't, because I don't own either. If I ended up buying Son instead of Kane, I would feel like I'd had to go to the bargain basement and just get whatever was 2 for 1 for dinner that day, because I just couldn't see at the moment. Obviously, having 5 midfield slots and 3 forward slots, it's easier to maneuver things and not completely break your squad to get Son in. Also, the price of Son is a lot cheaper. So for me at the moment, if I was to get rid of Antonio and instead of going to Watkins, I went to Harry Kane, I have to find some money from somewhere, which means selling Marcus Rashford. And Marcus Rashford, I'd still have enough money, 5.5 million, to get maybe a Rafinha, which is not a bad shout because it will cover me through for quite a few weeks. Or just make the single transfer, which is Rashford to Son, and then not have to worry about juggling it around. So I don't think it helps me. It might help me longer term, but it won't help me with the triple captain armband. I would still probably just stick it on Salah and not worry about it than go with him in Son. Very capable, but I'd rather just get Kane.
The other factor to bring into this, which is worth a consideration from a Heung-min Son perspective, is the impact of Bale. Now, Bale probably doesn't affect Son in terms of attacking returns, but it might make him a little bit cautious in terms of what he's doing defensively if Bale goes and plays on the other side. And I think the opinion very much amongst Tottenham fans is now, like, he has to play. Please play him for these next 3 league games. And if he's shit, he's shit. But please give him a chance now. And for Son, obviously, the benefit of a lot of the goals he obviously gets is the in-behind runs. We know that. We know he can shoot from distance and score, as proven in the goal against Arsenal earlier in the season. But the majority of the goals come from the in-behind, right? Burnley don't really allow it. Neither do Fulham. I spoke yesterday about how deep Fulham's centre-backs go. They make the pitch quite big. Anderson and Adebayo don't get caught out in behind. But Son has done that to them earlier in the season, and Son proved last season that he could just run all the way through Burnley. So don't discount him. But for me, definitely Harry Kane. I will triple captain Harry Kane as long as he's fit. And there isn't actually a doubt in my mind at all about doing it. I look at his involvement in terms of goals for Tottenham, his history record. If any one of these players was to get a hat-trick this week, and I said to you, who's the most likely? You go, yeah, do you know what? He's probably Harry on Sunday against Burnley, looking at it historically and what he's capable of doing. There will be a reaction from Tottenham next week. Now, that might be a bad reaction, by the way. We don't know yet. But if it's going to be a reaction, you won't see it on Thursday because the tie's already won. But it'll either be a good reaction or it'll be a bad reaction. If it's a good reaction, Harry Kane will do well. And I actually suspect that it will be a good reaction because I think there's a lot of pressure from within Tottenham at the moment to try and play more offensively. And if we just look at this brief little period recently from the Everton Cup game, that car crash of a football match, which arguably we shouldn't have lost. I mean, 8-8 on penalties probably would have been about right on the night, but we lost 5-4. We started all right at City. I spoke about Kane missing the post. The first half performance in Austria last week was really good. Actually, a limited team, don't get me wrong, but we had 3 in the first half and we could have had more. And then in the second half against yourselves, we obviously threw everything at it, although we played really poorly until we went 2-0 down. So there is small signs that perhaps Mourinho is beginning to understand that he's not actually a good coach anymore and he might as well let him play football.
That statement that you just made will come back to haunt you in Tottenham, which we're recording later today for the patrons, because his exact words were, we are second to none. So I do not think anywhere that Jose Mourinho has realised that he can't coach.
There isn't a single listener that thinks Jose Mourinho is the best coach in the world. Let me promise you. So I think
are you telling me that you think that Jose Mourinho doesn't listen to our podcast, mate? He listens. Trust me.
I hope he listens.
We're talking
I
about...
hope he's on Patreon as well, and I hope he leaves straight after that podcast later.
We're talking about getting a reaction out of Spurs and then maybe them clicking and things coming into gear. There is a team that are clicking, that are the best team in the league by far, scoring the most goals, conceding the least goals, and yet they're probably the most difficult to pick a triple captain option out of. Unless you own Edison or something like that.
I think and the reason we've kind of paired City as their owners to cover the last options for game week 26 specifically is
it that emoji, that shrug emoji?
Well,
Who?
It's probably 5 options, and judging by a comment you made yesterday, maybe there's 6. Because you're thinking about Phil Foden, aren't you?
Well, he's had a rest, right? So if we're thinking about
logic,
yeah, I mean, what other logic do we have for guessing Pep's rotation? How many times we thought, well, Cancelo play on the left and Walker on the right, and Cancelo pops up on the right and Zinchenko on the left. Gundogan plays deeper, even though he's hurt his left bollock or whatever else. So, yeah, you can't guess it. Other than Foden was playing well, he's now had a rest. But I don't think... I actually think we'll see a similar team. I think Bernardo Silva, Gundogan, give them the ability to move the ball nice and quick. Sterling, Mahrez, and De Bruyne will cause problems for anybody up top. And then Torres or Foden coming in off the bench and Jesus coming off the bench will cause anybody problems. So difficult. I've just rattled off about 7 or 8 names there.
I'll tell you the 5 options that I would consider this week. Ruben Diaz, pure consistency, reliability that he'll play twice. Genuinely, I would be stunned if he doesn't play twice at the moment. It's worth saying, obviously, we're recording prior to them playing Borussia Mönchengladbach this week. So there's always a case that you might hear this later in the week and they picked up some injuries in the week. But Ruben Diaz, I think, those 2 games, particularly the factor in that, he definitely played against Antonio. I'm absolutely certain of it. And then the Wolves game as well, I wouldn't see him missing out. City, of course, have 2 doubles in a row. We'll talk about the second one in a second. But it's 4 home games for them as well. Like how much do we need to overlook this? The best team in the country has 4 home fixtures over 2 consecutive double game weeks. I mean, really, you want 3 of the players, don't you? But I think defensively, I highlighted this before game week 24 double with Tottenham and Everton and went, I thought for the offensive assets that 24 was probably best. But for the defensive assets, I think it's this one, 26. West Ham and Wolves at home. I don't know about you, Suj, but they just scream 2-0 both games to me. Like, it's as simple as that.
Yes.
I've got that feel about them, haven't they? City won't batter them, but City will probably win comfortably enough. 2-0 or so, both games.
Yeah. We do struggle. West Ham definitely. We do struggle against teams that keep the ball well. Like we saw in the game against Liverpool and what have you, we struggle to get the ball off them. And what happens with West Ham in these games is when we do get the ball, we panic. We're like, oh, we've got the ball. We've got to do something with it now. We're not good at that. This winning run for City can't go on forever. So someone's got to beat them. I'm hoping it's us. But yeah, we do struggle with teams that don't give away the ball a lot. And Wolves only play for half a game every match. They only play in the second half. So that's a bit easy for City to win the first half 2-0. They haven't scored the first goal in how long, we mentioned the other day. So City go 1-0 up or 2-0 up, and that's a dead game as well. So, yeah, logically, it all points to that.
Would you group West Ham and Wolves in the same category as Crystal Palace, Burnley and Sheffield United?
No.
Why not? It might sound like a basic question, but why not?
So West Ham have set-piece threat. I think at any point, I mean, even Dawson had that attempt against you guys. Diop had a great opportunity. They completely fluffed, but it was a good opportunity. So I think the set-piece threat is much better from West Ham. And then the quality on the pitch. Now, I think the likes of Lingard and Antonio and what have you, when they're on song, they can cut through a defence. So we've got better offensive players. We're more stable in defence. We're better than them. So I wouldn't put them in the same bracket as the others. Wolves is a bit hit and miss, much more hit and miss.
The reason I mention it is I think we can say, even judging from what we regularly see from Wolves, what we've seen from West Ham in games recently, including, to be honest, the game against Tottenham at weekend, is happy to be without the ball. City, we know, will dominate against the majority of sides anyway. But the reason I consider the idea of should we put them in the same category is looking at Cancelo's statistics. So since game week 5, Cancelo has only not started 3 games. That's it, just 3 games. And it's those 3 games I mentioned. Crystal Palace at home.
Because he can flip him either side. It's like, okay, I need him at right back, I'll chuck him there. I need him at left back, I'll chuck him there. And he's fit enough to keep going.
But I also don't think it's coincidence that he's gone, well, Palace, Burnley and Sheffield United will put up such a block that I don't suppose he's running off the ball, or the fact that he drops into make an additional central midfield player particularly mattered against those 3 opponents. I would think that because of the counter-attacking capability of West Ham and Wolves, that he will think that it will. I would get beyond a concern with Cancelo about is he or isn't he going to play. And I tell you what, if he gets a break against Borussia Mönchengladbach in the Champions League, he will shoot up in people's estimations for captaincy in game week 26. Extremely viable. Diaz is obviously the slightly more reliable in terms of starting perspective. Because obviously, if Cancelo does play in the Champions League, I think it would probably be.
It's funny.
It would be fair to assume that a rest, rather than from tactical, is probably due at some point soon.
It's funny because you mentioned the run that City have with the 4 home games, and it got me thinking: why don't I just get 2 of the attackers in De Bruyne and Sterling, and pile in on that rather than the 2 defensive? And then I looked at Cancelo, and I'm like, you know what? He's the best of both, really, isn't he? Because he gives you the defensive coverage of the clean sheet.
General said that to us before. It's like having an extra attacking player with City. Yeah. It's brilliant, isn't it?
So I think I'm going to stick with my my current setup of Diaz, Cancelo, and then we talk about the attacking players in De Bruyne or Sterling.
We have to throw Gundogan into the mix as well. And I'm not going to... I think Gundogan's performances over the last 11, 12 game weeks, however long, is very well documented. There's obviously no point looking at Gundogan's statistical record against opponents coming up either, because he plays a very different position now. Some of the statistics for De Bruyne and Sterling against the upcoming 26 and 27 opponents, quite interesting. We'll kind of phase into 27 after this as well. So De Bruyne has scored 3 goals and 4 assists in 9 appearances against West Ham, has 1 goal and 2 assists in only 2 appearances against Wolves. He was absolutely outstanding in that game week 2 fixture earlier this season. Raheem Sterling does like playing against West Ham. 6 goals and 6 assists in 10 appearances against West Ham.
Thinking about him gives me, like, if it was just West Ham, I'd captain Raheem Sterling over Kevin De Bruyne, because he does like to tear it up against
2 goals, 2 assists in 5 appearances versus Wolves is very good as well. One thing I'd say about that Sterling against West Ham statistic, I didn't look at it in detail, to be very honest, but I do know that a lot of those returns were in Stratford rather than at the Etihad. Yep. He scored a hat-trick against you game week 1 last season, didn't he?
I know, because I've seen them all. Just assaulting wounds.
And they was it 4-0, 5-0, 5-0, wasn't it? 3 in a row or something, and a 4-1 as well, I think.
They've been battering us. I don't think it will be that much.
You don't normally get battered there.
No.
That's kind of the mean is like, 2-0, 2-1, something like that.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be high, like massive, more than 3, but let's see. I would prefer Raheem Sterling, strangely.
Now in 27, if we kind of move into the idea, I think, probably just because De Bruyne's lack of fitness. I think if you've got Sterling, there's every temptation to want to go with it in 26. I can see
but
that.
I think De Bruyne is more likely to play both games than Sterling.
I'm not sure that's the case at the moment.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's the case, particularly if he plays in the Champions League this midweek as well. I'm not sure that's right. And you have to factor as well that, okay, look, they have West Ham and Wolves. It's a 3-day turnaround as well, which is a little bit dirty. Saturday lunchtime and then Tuesday evening. Then, yes, they do have a 5-day break to the Manchester derby. So, unlike in some of the other ones, you can almost split their 2 doubles into 2 split doubles. You don't have to connect the dots between the 26 and 27 like you do with some of the other players. So there's a nice break between the 2 doubles. City's 27 doubles, so 2 home games, Manchester United and Southampton. Now, De Bruyne has 1 goal in 10 appearances against Manchester United in all competitions. That's it. 2 goals, 7 assists in 9 appearances against Southampton. So on the face of it, we'd go 26 is better than 27 historically for De Bruyne on those fixtures, wouldn't we?
Yep.
Plus, I think if he got rested in the Champions League tonight, I could see that he'd maybe get rested against Southampton, ironically. And for Sterling in those, the potential 27 doubles, that looks no better. So Raheem Sterling has never scored against Manchester United in 19 appearances. That includes all appearances for Liverpool, an astonishing statistic. He has 4 goals and 4 assists in 11 appearances against Southampton, which is good. But the record of both De Bruyne and Sterling versus Manchester United particularly, I think would definitely make you lean 26 over 27 of the two. And I think because of United's counter-attacking threat, they won at the Etihad last season twice in the League Cup as well as in the league. That would make you, if you were going the defensive guys, you'd go 26 rather than 27, wouldn't you?
Yeah, without a doubt, 100%.
Single game weeks where you might want to consider City. It's Fulham away in 28, Leeds at home in 31. There's also away fixtures at Palace, Newcastle and Brighton are the last 3 away fixtures, which might appeal actually, particularly if they're out the Champions League and they got their feet up. But you can't plan for that. At the moment, we all think City's got a good chance of winning that competition as well, don't we? And if anything, they're likely to rest up in the Premier League rather than
Champions League.
Take it. Yeah. So I think in terms of trip, if you want to go City, it's probably this week now, isn't it?
Yeah.
In hindsight, it was 24. But it's probably this week. In terms of the games that haven't been arranged yet, I know there's obviously a lot of people be on bench boost this week are like, look, I haven't used my triple captaincy. When can I use it then? So there are still doubles that are going to come up, we know, for Aston Villa, Tottenham, Everton, Southampton. Southampton, of course, have a double game with themselves as Sheffield United and Manchester City in game week 27, but I don't believe anybody wants to talk them through the prospects of Danny Ings over a Manchester City double. So we'll skip that. Villa and Everton, when can it be played? So the first opportunity for it to be played is the Wednesday in game week 28, 6 p.m. kickoff. Now, what that's dependent on is a little bit what happens with Tottenham and Arsenal in the next few days in Europe. So Tottenham are playing at 5 o'clock in Europe this week because them and Arsenal were both drawn at home. I mean, it's even more ridiculous. We can't play at home in the same city in the same night. Arsenal playing in fucking Greece anyway. So God knows why we're playing at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. That's a whole other podcast. But should that happen again, where the two teams are both drawn to play at home, and let's say second leg, because that's what 28 would be, second leg, then there's a good chance Tottenham will play at 5 o'clock again on a Wednesday. And I think that would rule out Villa and Everton. I think that's why we haven't got the announcement, is my instinct. This is what we're waiting on, to make sure that neither Tottenham or Arsenal have to play at 5 p.m. on the Wednesday. The reason it be Tottenham, by the way, 5 p.m. on a Wednesday, is because they have a lower coefficient than Arsenal. I don't quite know how that works out when we were in the Champions League final 2 years ago and they haven't been in the Champions League for about 5 years. But hey, that's UEFA for you. But it would be Tottenham.
There really is a long legacy on the how far back they go.
Should we do FIFA rankings now as well?
Yeah, that's another pod for another day. England, the best team in the world, aren't they? Based on that.
So now, information you're not going to get before 26 deadline, but I think what we could assume from the European draws on Friday is if Arsenal Tottenham are both drawn at home in the second leg of the Europa League last 16, obviously if they both make it through, then that really does cancel out the idea of Villa and Everton to a large perspective. If that doesn't happen, and let's be honest, it's at least a 75% chance that draw won't pan out that way, then Villa and Everton is still a strong possibility for 28. Villa's double would be Newcastle away and Everton at home. Do you think that's better than the double this week, Suj, of Leeds away, Sheffield United away? Newcastle away and Everton at home in 28.
No, I think both are stingier defensively.
And for Everton, it would be Burnley at home and Aston Villa away. Does that sound better to you than Southampton at home and West Bromwich Albion away?
No.
I don't think so either.
No.
So
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think the point being there in terms of most likely case, if you wanted to go Calvert-Lewin or Watkins, on the face of it, this week is still better than the potential 28. What I was obviously hoping was Villa and Everton was going to be 26, and then them 28 doubles would have been incredible. Now, if the game doesn't happen in 28, I think it's fair to assume it won't happen in 27 now. Extremely unlikely. It's a bit late in the day. It can't be on the Tuesday that midweek because Everton away to Chelsea on the Monday night. So it's not going to go into 27 anyway, unless it went on a Thursday, then it's going to clash with Europa League anyway. So it's not going to happen because Everton have got the Monday night at Chelsea in game week 27. So if it's not 28, obviously isn't going to be 29 because it's international break afterwards. So then the first opportunity is game week 30. Now, and it probably will be a case of what's the best earliest available, particularly even more so should say Everton beat Manchester City in the FA Cup quarterfinal. Now, there's no reason why they would announce when the double's going to be prior to game week 29, because Everton's result against Manchester City could have a big bearing on what happens with that. So, for example, Everton play Tottenham in game week 32. Should obviously Everton win in the cup, presumably that gets moved to the midweek. Villa have Manchester City, Everton's opponents in the cup quarterfinal. So one of them fixtures has definitely got to be moved to the midweek. So the chance of Villa and Everton being in the midweek of 32 is actually quite unlikely as it stands.
Right.
Because obviously one of those fixtures from the weekend of 32 has got to be off because Everton and City play each other.
Needing a merry-go-round of stuff
and obviously the other one that then doesn't need postponing is presumably going to stay the weekend. Now there is the idea, I spoke about this for a potential idea for Tottenham in a previous scenario where you would just move both of those fixtures to the midweek in any case, and then yes, Villa and Everton could play each other at the weekend. If Everton have lost to Manchester City in the FA Cup quarterfinals, you can see this is complicated. The best thing to do is say, what's the best that could happen later on? So one scenario is Villa have West Brom at home in game week 33. So that could then be West Brom and Everton as a double in 33. The other reason I think they really want to get Villa and Everton arranged as quickly as possible is they play each other in 34. And that might even be the last opportunity to potentially throw in the extra fixture. So I think Villa and Everton, in my opinion, is probably a rolling case of arrange it as soon as possible. I do think it's most likely to be 28, and then there's a chance it could even be 30, I think, and you won't know about that till 29 is long gone, if that's possible. So I think there is an intention to arrange it as quickly as possible. Should it be 30, Villa have Fulham and Everton have Crystal Palace. So the doubles would be better than probably 28, but I'm working on the basis at the moment they'll go into 28, and I think we're both in agreement that the doubles for both are probably better now than in 28. Now, what people really want to know is what's going to happen with the other fucking Tottenham fixture. The chance of getting
a game.
Yeah. So the most likely scenario, in my opinion, is that it probably just drops into 32. Tottenham is easier to understand what's happening because of the involvement in Europa League. Should Tottenham get to the Europa League final, the only three midweeks potentially are 32 and 37. I think 32 is more likely, even if Southampton get to the FA Cup semi-final, which is highly likely. They've got a good draw against Bournemouth. Southampton are due to play Crystal Palace on the weekend of game week 32. Should Southampton reach the FA Cup semi-finals and Tottenham are still in Europe, I think it's just most likely that Southampton against Palace would go into 33, 34 or 35 another week. They might even bring it forward to 31 or 30 as a possibility. Bringing it forward to 31, ironically, would be quite interesting for Southampton. Would give them a double of West Brom away and Crystal Palace at home if you want to hold on for Danny Ings and feel brave. But there's a lot of dots to connect to get to that point. Now, Tottenham 32 would be a double of Everton and away and then Southampton at home should Everton lose to Manchester City in the FA Cup quarterfinals. And obviously if the game gets arranged there, which I think is the most likely scenario. Is that better than what we've got now? Now, on the face of it, definitely no, but it might be. Consider what I said about Southampton being better than Fulham for Kane as a fixture. And also look what happened when Tottenham and Everton played each other a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I understand that. I just think that we bird in the hand versus two in the tree, and at the moment the bird in the hand is also quite a fat bird. I don't think that it's worth overlooking this. I think it's relevant for people that have the bench boost this week and don't know what they're doing. But even if I was playing bench boost this week, James, I would simply use it on Man City next week. I would just get it done with City while I know they've got the doubles and get it done because of the situation that COVID, I think, is becoming less and less of a concern amongst the games because the vaccinations rolling out and all the rest of it. So postponements because of COVID are not going to affect my decision making, but injuries might. So that's the real thing now. Where if I know what I have, what cards are on the table, I'm going to play them. Yeah, I'm really convinced with looking at City. Kane versus Sterling this week.
I think where I'd be at with this, it's a point I want to make on 33 before I forget, before we finish as well. Obviously, there's people who are in a position now where they're lined up for bench boost, have still got the triple captaincy. So it's easy to say use it now. There's a lot of people who are set for their bench boost. They can't. They want to know when best to use it. I think quite simply, my assessment of it would be that it's probably Harry Kane in the other double, whatever that may be. And yes, he's likely to be Everton Southampton. It could be that it's 2 games against teams who have nothing to play for by the time it comes around. The concern with that, the flip is as well, same could be the case for Tottenham, and we might still be in the Europa League, in which case, for a rare occasion, you'd be thinking, does Kane play twice? There's also the possibility that the Tottenham Southampton rearrangement could go into 33. Right. Is a possibility in that midweek. Now, for that to happen, I think you probably need Tottenham to lose in Europa League quarterfinals. And then it could be that they decide, oh, it's a bit late notice for 32. We'll put it in 33. But I'm pretty sure that they'll just announce 32. That's the most likely thing. But the reason to just note 33 is a caution. We spoke last week about the idea of free hitting in 33 because Tottenham, Southampton, Man City and Fulham won't play in 33. I'm just saying to bear in mind in the back of your mind, the Tottenham and Southampton could end up playing in the midweek of 33, and then they'll just have a normal single fixture. So there is a small possibility as well, and it is small, that it goes in there and Kane won't even have another double. That's something to bear in mind. It could, of course, go into 34 as well, in which case Kane's got Southampton and Sheffield United, and then you think, yeah, great, I'll have some of that. So I think you're keeping your options open for if you're not using it this week, mainly because you're bench boosting. I think unless you're using another chip, use it this week. I think you're spot on, Suj. I don't see anything in the future that makes me think, oh yeah, great. Particularly when you factor in some of these players we've been over today, they're all in good positions in their European ties, right? They could all go far. I think use it. You won't lose it. But we had it a couple of years ago where so many of us ended up captaining like Mane or Salah against Huddersfield because the opportunities that we thought were going to come, it just never came round. So if you're not using a chip this week, I think find one and use the triple captaincy this week. I think I'm going Kane. Despite the fact how much I hate my team sometimes, I don't doubt him and his capability in those sort of fixtures. I think I saw a stat. I'll credit FPL Sui if I can find the tweet. But I think in games against bottom half teams this season, I think Kane's only blanked once.
Wow.
Which is big. So here's the tweet. It's from FPL_Sui on Twitter. Harry Kane versus bottom 8 teams in the Premier League this season. 21 points, 5 points, 5 points, 6 points, 9 points, 9 points, 12 points, 8 points, 9 points, 8 points. 10 games, 0 blanks, averaging 9.2 points per game. I obviously used the stat of saying that I think he's only blanked once against the team in the bottom half, which I think was Wolves away. That's why Harry Kane's getting a triple captaincy for me, because he can be absolutely ruthless in games like this.
Only on Planet FPL will you get an entire hour dedicated to what we started the show by calling the least important chip in the game.
Yeah, just do it. Put it on all Bamba blank.
Yeah, and be done with it. It was funny. There was a moment where you talked about the most powerful midfielders in the game being Bruno and Salah, and I did want to turn around in the middle of the pod and turn to you and say, Aubameyang? But anyhow, yeah, there you go. There's a good rundown on the triple captaincy chip. Wherever you're listening to the podcast, do hit the subscribe button. You'll get notified as soon as we put more content out. We do have Sky Fantasy Football for you tomorrow, Clash of the Correspondents. Looking forward to Everton and West Brom at the weekend. And James will be live streaming on Friday as well. Anything else to add, James?
Yeah, let's go and record Tottenham. I need to have a rant.
Nice. Stay safe. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck. Cue music, please, man child.
You said rant. Definitely said rant.
Yeah, no, I said rant.
Fine.
Yeah. Be nice to each other.